And what for me is beautiful and important is that you've got to the right kind of solution or the right kind of questions. And if the solution is right, that's a bonus. But it's almost indecently good to have got this theory so sorted out. At the same time, I was contacted by Francis Wells, who was a major heart surgeon at Papworth, one of the world's great valve surgeons, who got interested in Leonardo's heart drawings and is publishing a book on them shortly, I hope. And he actually looked at the mitral valve design, which conventionally is thought to be a 2-leaflet pattern. Instead, Leonardo thought it was a 4-leaflet pattern, and he went back to look at the gross anatomy and how it functioned, and decided it did act as if it was a 4-leaflet pattern. And he's now revised his operation, and the students call it the Leonardo operation. So Leonardo and Maury Garrett and Francis Wells have now published 2 papers together on the operation of the heart valve in the light of dynamic flow. So Leonardo, you never know where you're going to get to. It's very exciting things. Another one of the sort of drawings which he transferred across, and I'm showing you this one because the video, if it runs, uses this drawing of weirs. These weirs are identifiable on another Leonardo map as being near Florence, and the 2 weirs here open at their centre, which were meant to control the flow, had just resulted in a vortex and a further rebound, which was excavating bits of the bank. This is clearly a report to somebody who's Leonardo's written moderately, legibly left to right. So this is obviously commissioned by the Florentines, so you can work out why these weirs were causing more problems than they were solving. Now, keep your fingers crossed, because latterly I've had a lot of trouble with examinations running. The heart works like a towel. That's where the great pressure comes from. So this was done in collaboration with Maury Garrett and Francis Wells. Watch the wee guys over there, that'd be nice. We had 8 of these in the Victoria Museum show, expounding various aspects of Leonardo's thought in this dynamic way. And if you can see that happening, then it saves a lot of label writing and a lot of explanation. You say, that's how that worked. Steve Meyer is just fantastically good. We worked terrifically hard to get the density of the inks right, paper colour right, and we actually did that with the Leonardo drawings. So it was a very satisfying enterprise. Anyway, that's in a sense a link from yesterday's solid geometry, which Leonardo was one of the great masters of, to process, i.e. to the dynamic form. I could, of course, give a lecture on spirals, and underlying this lecture, and to some extent last week's one, was Darcy Wentworth Thompson. For years I taught in St Andrews, so he was a local man, and taught in St Andrews and Dundee on growth and form. And I'm showing you the cover of the most recent complete edition, plus his drawing for the Nautilus shell of an Archimedean, of a logarithmic spiral, which increases systematically in size as it goes out. Very much connected with spirals, but Thompson is interesting because he was able to come up with a lot of mathematical analyses of nature in action, but it became so what science? He had no causes, he had no causal explanation. So in biology it rather died a death, because somebody said, why is this happening? We're observing these mathematical analogies across forms, but so what? That so what, of course, with modern computer modeling is beginning to be answered in various ways. And some of the self-organizing systems that we now call them are being reviewed with molecular biology and cellular and cell biology and so on. So he's having a great revival. He never died with designers. Architecture schools, designers, Thompson was a big name. You would find on the reading lists of architecture schools, Thomson's growth and form persisted, even when he'd more or less disappeared in biology. And I could do an exposition of spiral movements, which I'm not going to do. It's a much explored theme, and it's still got things to say about it, but I thought it'd be interesting not to do that. But just as one indication, this is Chris Drury, an artist I've worked with, who we saw very briefly yesterday. The top one is a reed bed. It's a reed marsh bed in Sussex, which he's caressed the existing shapes into a symphony of curls and spirals. And the bottom one, he was the artist attached to the British Antarctic expedition, and those spirals, which I think you can just about see, are actually measures and plots of the wind as it vortexed its way, if there is such a verb, across the snowy waste. He also did wonderful works about the drilling down through the strata to extract, through the snow strata to extract information about climate change. Many of the artists I'm involved with are involved in the environmental movement in some sense, not politically necessarily in their art, but in understanding the resonance of processes in nature and human thought. But I'm doing splashing and folding. Leonardo again. This one of the marginal illustrations from the Codex Leicester, the rippling forms I'll be coming back to. And he noted incidentally that if you drop a triangular form into water, the waves rather quickly settle into a concentric pattern rather than going out triangularly. You could decide that you can find it out yourself, which he found fascinating. At the bottom, the splash, which is quite nice, isn't it, given the fact that he had no real evidence for seeing a splash doing that, but Leonardo managed somehow or other to intuit things in a particular way which other people didn't. The story of splashes as a major form of art and science has to wait for stroboscopic photography, for instantaneous photography. Arthur Worthington's study of splashes on the left, 1908. Many of you probably know the coloured version in Egerton and Stroh Valley, which we'll be looking at. But it's very old, and this is fantastic pioneering work, dropping balls into milk. Milk was more viscous and allowed the photography to work its wonders more carefully. Thomson, unsurprisingly, picks up on this formal shape, the corona that develops in these particular circumstances, and aligned them typically with medusoids and polyps and those sea creatures that have gelatinous bodies with no shaping skeleton. And he also aligned them with water jets, and on the right is a viscous fluid dropping into a non-viscous one and bifurcating what we would now see as a fractal pattern. Again, it became somewhat science at the time. You can say, well, it looks like the Worthington splashes look like a medusoid, so what? Now, of course, we can do modelling which gives at least some causal explanation, some rationale for this kind of thing. The corona became something of itself, a minor iconic image. Worthington at the top, this is Egerton, in Stroh Valley. Egerton, as you may know, is the man who did photographs of bullets going through apples and the sort of things which students often put up on the walls of their rooms. Certainly, when I was a student, they don't do it anymore. How many people know the Egerton image as a... Yeah, it's not quite as iconic as it was, but it didn't make it into my book as iconic images. But anyway, for a time in Oxfordshire, the milk mark tankers contained that logo. And I talked to the man at the depot and said, I know where this comes from. He said, yes, it's a milk splash. And I said, how many people recognise it? He said, well, not too many. So it's a bit of branding that didn't quite work. They now have some other, rather less attractive, but perhaps more functional logo.